I think like sometimes data roles can feel like they're a little behind the scenes or back of the office. I feel like data science can play such a pivotal role in building products. It really just depends on the team and the company and the person. So,
Yeah. All I do is I just prompt engineer ChatGPT and everything gets done. Jokes aside, I very closely work with product and engineers. I think that's probably a common theme throughout all these companies. Amazon is a huge company. It has like hundreds of thousands of employees. Twitter, closer to 8,000 to 9,000 employees.
Yeah.
Then Nextdoor, which is like 600, 700 employees. The spirit of collaboration is very similar. You will always work with PM engineers and the subject matter experts in that specific vertical. We work on a day-to-day basis, discuss things that need to be tested out, measured, what is working, what is not working, what kind of improvements can we do on the product.
The product has multiple stages: opportunity sizing, analysis, discovery. What should the product roadmap be? What are some pain points of users that you want to go and understand and solve for today? Experimentation, metric definitions, deep dive analysis, helping launch a product and figuring out what users need.
Yeah, working with designer, engineer, it's so much easier to earn trust. And like you were saying, Sravya, take ownership when you're embedded into those teams in a specific area of a product, versus there are some companies that have a centralized data model where I think there is more of that perspective of these are my stakeholders, not necessarily my partners.
So almost like consulting, but within the company, right? You are not part of their daily stand-ups. You're not part of their pod meetings. They're going to basically come to you with like a ticket. Hey, I have this request, can you get this done? It's more of a give and take relationship. I give this, what do you give me back? You don't know the context, you don't know the question behind the question. To understand what they are wanting, you basically need to be part of where they are.
Yeah.
Without that, you're not going to get all the context.
Imagine if you had centralized engineers and you had a product manager who was like, hey, can you change this feature for me? It's like the same thing. How? No, that would not work. It's just weird that happens with data teams. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Data Neighbors with Sravya and Sean. Today, happy to have a guest here, Anagh. For our listeners, Anagh has been a data scientist at Amazon, Twitter, is currently a staff data scientist at Nextdoor. Anagh, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Sravya. And thank you, High in Spirit. Thank you for having me. Really excited to be on Data Neighbors.
Welcome, Anagh. Welcome. So excited to have you. You've got experience in some of the big tech companies. So very excited to talk about your journey from big tech.
Yeah, excited to share.
So there's many different flavors of data science and data jobs, like data analyst versus data science, marketing science versus product data science. Sometimes data roles can feel like they're a little behind the scenes or back of the office. What I'd like to talk to you about is I feel like data science can play such a pivotal role in building products. It really just depends on the team and the company and the person. So in your experience at Amazon, at Twitter, Nextdoor, how does data science become central to driving the success of product development?
One of my favorite things to say is it depends. Data does really well at driving success for products which are relatively mature. I would not expect a 0 to 1 kind of a startup or a 0 to 1 kind of a product be completely driven by data. Definitely needs some vision, definitely needs some kind of problem identification, which is not done by other products or not done by other services. At each and every step after product gets introduced or launched or piloted, I would assume that to improve their product, to understand what users is doing, what is working, what is not working, we would need data and data scientists to help guide the product roadmap, vision, and day-to-day decisions. Imagine we have a Netflix-like service. We need to figure out what kind of shows to put on, what kind of movies to acquire, what should you get more of, what should you get less of, what customers to show it to. Everything is informed by data. At almost every step since the conception of a product, data or data science plays a very central role. I really think of the product data science space as the feedback loop for any of the product decisions that are being made. We start out with the metric side of things, understand what's working, what is not working, a lot of experimentation, proof of concept, modeling, to understand more about the customers, and then kind of iterate on each step.
The product has multiple stages: opportunity sizing, analysis, discovery. What should the product roadmap be? What are some pain points of users that you want to go and understand and solve for today? Once the product decides on that and goes ahead and solves the problem by building a product, knowing what type of product is resonating with the users by doing A/B testing. And then understanding if this is what you want to launch, experimentation, metric definitions, deep dive analysis into understanding the opportunities and helping launch a product and figuring out what users need. So
sounds pretty good summary of what I do. I always like to say we are like jack of all trades. We are the bridge between engineering and product. So don't be surprised if people put on more hats. Each company has their own definition of product roles, product data science roles.
Yeah, there's a ton of variety. Yeah, you've worked at like these top tech companies, Amazon, Twitter. What led you to get into product data science?
I would be lying if I said I had this completely figured out.
I don't think any of us did.
Yeah. I came here for my grad school in Macomb. So I was doing master's in business analytics. Prior to that, I had some very similar experience in analytics and analytics consulting. When I was in undergrad, I was open to anything. Like, this is one thing I also tell anybody who reaches out is just try out different things, see what sticks, see what you're liking. I was almost looking into going for grad school in robotics. I used to like work very close to data. The data was different, obviously. It was like sensor data. You need the robot to move a specific way when the sensors are giving this output versus that output. So all of it was, again, in some sense, at a very basic level data processing. One of the things that really excited me about that is seeing what I am suggesting the robot to do and the robot doing that. That, in its very essence, is what excited me. And
that's what I like about working in like SaaS products. It does move so fast that even if it's just analyzing an experiment, the thing I worked on and did this analysis on this week is in the product now. Next week, it's like cool getting that like instant gratification.
Yes, exactly. So I think some of it really translated well. So when I had a decision to make for my first job right after undergrad, I had a couple of options. So I was like, hey, I know I can go back to that robot stuff. Let me try this and see how it goes. If not, I can always go back to this other thing, right? That's how it started. I had no background in analytics or data science at that point in time. I was consulting with this company who is basically similar to Walmart, but in UK. There's like 3 or 4 retail store there. One of the things that I really liked was, again, my analysis kind of driving decisions at their end. So let's say they had a loyalty program and we were trying to figure out, are there specific types of customers who are abusing it? Like, because we figured out that, okay, there's this niche of customers who are like using it more than times in a week, which is crazy, right? And we gave that back to the company. They actually implemented it within a week and it saved them millions of pounds. That's why like I love doing this product data science stuff, because I know that whatever be the recommendation, right? I know it will kind of see the light of the day within, let's say, a week or 2 or 3 weeks. Long story short, I chanced upon product data science, analytics, and all that good stuff. I could have very well been the next big thing in robotics.
So, Anagh, I'm actually very interested in, understanding what type of problems do data scientist product at like Twitter or Amazon solve for today?
The product data science kind of spectrum is huge. For example, I worked at Amazon across different teams. Like I worked at Prime Video. I worked there for like 4 years on the personalization team. And then I moved on to Alexa, and I was majorly in their experimentation team. And then I moved to Twitter, where I was in a completely different vertical, looking into the trust and safety of stuff. And then I'm at Nextdoor, looking more into feed, like everything, personalization, UX, structure.
In Amazon, the product controlled what was shown, right, to the users. So it already had all its measures, unless probably a ton of people disliked it and it had ramifications for some trust and safety reasons. It's very less of a problem because all those checks probably happen before the content enters the product, right? But it's entirely a different ballgame when users itself are the people that are giving content, which is social media. And Twitter was even more notorious for that to start with. So when, as a platform, as a product, you want it to be engaging, and it definitely comes with its problems, because anything controversial is engaging. It's a very interesting problem to start with. And how you might have basically fought those battles being part of the trust and safety team to make sure that you might win, but win the right way.
Exactly. So a very good example of that is when our detection mechanisms of bad content improves, engagement drops. But we really need to convince everybody in the product team, and that's where we kind of work very, very closely with our product partners, is the kind of engagement that is dropping is the bad kind of engagement. We don't want that kind of engagement. That becomes a very, very important thing that even the product data scientist kind of defines. How do you find that balance? What metrics you define? What guardrails you define? How do you make those difficult decisions in these very high profile experiments is kind of all a part of this job. And I would be lying if I said it's just product data scientists. There are other cool PMs and engineers, and it's all a team.
I kind of want to get into that a little bit. Like, who else are you working with? If you think about an average week of work, what does that look like in terms of like who you're talking to, in what circumstances or forums? How are these like projects coming about? I'm sure it was probably different within Amazon across different teams and versus Twitter and Nextdoor.
Sure, yeah. All I do is I just prompt engineer ChatGPT and everything gets done. But yeah, jokes aside, I very closely work with product and engineers. Again, I think that's probably the common theme throughout all these companies. Like Amazon is a huge, huge company. It has like hundreds of thousands of employees who are working on products. Then there is Twitter, which was, I would say, closer to 8,000 to 9,000 employees.
Yeah.
Then there was Nextdoor, which is like closer to 600, 700 employees. So I think the spirit of collaboration is very similar. Like I usually work with product managers, I usually work with engineers, I usually work with subject matter experts in the specific product that I'm working with. And that is important because I learned that there are a lot of like folks from policy that you need to work with when you're in trust and safety. Whereas let's say you are in the content business, you might want to work with industry like producers, you need to understand what kind of data they have and stuff like that. So depending on the vertical that you are in, you will always work with PM engineers and the subject matter experts in that specific vertical. We work on a day-to-day basis, kind of discuss things that need to be, let's say, tested out, measured, what is working, what is not working, what kind of improvements can we do on the product. Depending on, again, the scale of the company, the maturity of the product, and so on, you might have to put on different roles. Like we might need to kind of make a POC for a very simple model that, okay, what kind of content do we want to show? Let's go back to the Netflix example. Should we show more movies on weekends?
Like a 30-minute TV show might work very good for a weekday because it's just 30 minutes and you're at least at the end of something. And movie probably you'll want to watch longer. On weekend, you might have time. So this is called a hypothesis. And these are what data scientists come with based on the data we analyze, the deep dive analysis that we do. Our product managers also come up with these without data by intuition, or user researchers go and interview users and get this data themselves as well. All of us basically devise this hypothesis. We build the experiments on, let's try out and see.
Yeah, at the hypothesis generation to actually running an experiment could be as quick as, let's say, half an hour, because let's say I just need to change the color of a button, versus it could be a lot of engineering and ML time. Let's say I need to build the state-of-the-art ML model for recommendation. That might take probably weeks and months as well. So when like the time comes, it is super important. Everybody's very invested in the whole decision because like, okay, people might be like, okay, I spent 2 months on this better work, right? But sometimes as a data scientist, you might be like, hey, I'm sorry, it does not. It is probably at best neutral. So it's like, how do you have that conversation? So how do you kind of even like have some learnings out of it? It need not be the fact that something failed, you don't learn anything from it. You can still dig deeper, figure out, hey, okay, if you have any hypothesis, kind of, can you have that feedback loop that I was talking about? Can I still learn from it? Hey, this worked with this set of users. This did not work with this set of users. Or there are two types of users who are kind of canceling each other out in terms of like, hey, these people are watching more, these people are watching less. Even if you experiment, you should not only just go for like launch or no launch, you should really be learning from it. That's when you are confronting a successful experiment rather than trying to always launch it. People do tend to be trigger happy in that context because people don't want their 2 to 3 months of efforts being wasted. And we need to kind of have the conversation with product engineering. And that's why I think I like to call us like jack of all trades. You need to be also fairly good in like spoken and written communication, because you can imagine this to be a very, very hard conversation to have. And that is something which I learned, I would say, on the job. And let's all be adults about it and get into a room and decide what's the best for the product, what's best for the company as well.
Yeah, I think those unexpected results in experimentation are a blessing in disguise. When you think about the product lifecycle, like you mentioned earlier, like cold start problems, really hard to even have data scientists be a part of because there's no data. But even when you are part of like a successful product, I've been in situations where people are just like, what do we do? What should we try? And just like throw random stuff at the wall. It's not even truly based on some user's job to be done. People are just like, make that thing yellow or make that thing green. But when you have an experiment that fails that way, now you have all of this real data from users on what they did, where you can draw some really well-informed hypotheses from for several other new product changes. And you get to start that product life cycle much more than informed than like having to like do some sort of guesswork.
Another thing which is very different across the companies, and mainly owing to the scale of the companies, is like how well they are positioned within the data-backed decision-making spectrum, right? You can imagine probably a more mature company, a bigger scale company, they might have more appetite for like spending resources for a lot of data analysis, a lot of analytics, a lot of kind of data science, a lot of experiments. Whereas a very small company who is very nimble, they're like, hey, okay, we need to take a leap of faith at some point, and we need to kind of not spend these many cycles doing analysis. So I think each company has its own culture. Each company has its own appetite for spending resources on these kind of things. And I would say it was like a very good learning experience kind of having like worked in all these companies, because again, the appetite is very different. You kind of fine tune your own conversations, fine tune your own judgment based on that.
Yeah.
Not just companies, right? Even within teams, it's going to be different within companies. Trust and safety is going to be a certain kind. Growth team is going to be a certain kind. Core team is going to be a certain kind. And it depends on probably the leader, the team structure. And you just have to like basically understand which type of partners you work with and then change accordingly, sort of a thing. Yeah.
Completely.
So coming back, so data science product work with product managers, engineers, engineering manager, and designers, user research people. When there are interviews that they go and ask people about how they like the product, that will help with the hypothesis. And they also work with data engineers and analytical engineers. And in places that have data analysts, we probably work with data analysts too. But these are the core set of people that we'll work with, right?
Completely. I would like a huge shout out to all the data engineers and analytics engineers out there. We would be kind of useless without you folks.
I feel like those are the roles that are always understaffed at every single company. I've never been to a company and been like, there's way too many data engineers here. Every single time I'm like,
so darn true.
My God, we need some more. These people are really good. Like, come on.
Yes, and I think I have had to build my own share of like data pipelines. I'm pretty sure like data engineers would kind of fringe at it if they look at my code, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
In your time as data science product, what do you think has been the most hardest skill to acquire?
One of the key things I realized over time is like earning trust of our partners. That's going to be super important. When I join a new company, right, there is no reason for them to trust me because they have not worked with me. They have not kind of interacted with me, and kind of basing their whole product feature and roadmap based on recommendations that is given by me is going to be a huge, huge deal. And given we are cross-functional, this translates to earning trust with product engineers, designers, data engineers, and so on with those partners, because I think that's how we should be operating rather than thinking of like other people as stakeholders. But earning trust is very key, irrespective of what the tenure is for a data scientist or any person. The first couple of quarters will be spent earning trust. And every person has their own flavor of how they earn trust. That is very, very key for a very successful product data scientist and product dev relationship in general. I wish I could do it sooner each time I join a new team, but it does not get easier.
Yeah. What's kind of your flavor of earning trust?
One of the things I feel works well is being very transparent and almost like over-delivering. I'm not saying under-promise, over-deliver. I'm just saying over-delivering. Say they asked you one thing. Often what happens is there are questions behind a question. Imagine yourself to be in their shoes and try to see where they are coming from and trying to help solve it at the source rather than helping with the symptoms. Peel the layers and then over-delivering on it. Over time, they will then come to you for a lot of things. I don't want to be taking orders from folks, but if you earn that trust, they will start generating those hypotheses with you. You will be part of meetings that are discussing these things. People are like, hey, let me pull Anagh in. I know he had great ideas on these things. Because more often than not, we are closest to the data. People might have hypotheses, but we have the data. So I think that really helps. Getting your foot in the door in that meeting room really helps. And earning trust is first step for that.
Those are great points. Be an owner. Come, show up with accountability and responsibility and, deliver. That's when people believe that, hey, this person is telling the truth. They've immensely showed that they care.
Completely. And that's why I use the word partner. I don't like the word stakeholders. Stakeholders means that there is some sort of hierarchy. Like I don't own the product as much as you do. It really should be partnership. It really should be like PM, designer, scientist, engineer that work together as a team and ship a product and are owning it. If something goes down, something goes wacky, we should be the first ones to fix it, first ones to figure out what's going on, and then be the face of the product feature. Even though it might be a small feature within a very big company, but still it's a feature and people are using it, people are caring about.
You mentioned stakeholder versus partner and working with designer, engineer. It's so much easier, I think, to earn trust when you're embedded into those teams. And like you were saying, Sravya, take ownership when you're embedded into those teams in a specific area of a product, versus there are some companies that have a centralized data model where I think there is more of that perspective of these are my stakeholders, not necessarily my partners. Have either of you worked in that kind of situation before? How would you compare one versus the other?
I'll let Sravya go first this time.
Yeah. I mean, I did. Basically, it's almost like consulting, but within the company, right? So basically, to explain that to audience, there's going to be a central data team, and they keep getting requests from multiple types of stakeholders. Probably in that central data team, there are a certain set of data scientists that support a certain area. That could happen. Even then, you are not part of their daily stand-ups. You're not part of their pod meetings. They're going to basically be just themselves, and they come to you with a ticket. Hey, I have this request, can you get this done? Hey, I have this, can you get this done? Sort of a thing. So in those cases, it's more of a give and take relationship. I give this, what do you give me back? Or you don't know the context, you don't know the question behind the question. To know the question behind the question, to understand what they are wanting, you basically need to be part of where they are. Without that, you're not going to get all the context. So take the ownership, which makes it more of a stakeholder relationship. But
it's imagine if I don't get why companies do that. Imagine if you had centralized engineers and you had a product manager who was like, hey, can you change this feature for me? I want to change this one thing in the feature. It's like the same thing. It's like, no, that would not work. But for some reason, it seems it's not as common now, but I've been in that situation before too. But it's just weird that happens with data teams.
Yeah, I have thought about it. I've been on both sides of the thing. And I think the reason for that is if you think about all these tech companies, the ratio of engineers to PMs to data scientists is very skewed, right? Like I would be very surprised if there is a company where there is a 1-to-1 ratio, or even like for every couple of engineers, there's one data scientist. That's usually not the case. So I have always been in companies where the ratio to an engineer to a data scientist is closer to 20-to-1 versus 10-to-1 or something like that. Somewhere in between that. It's just numbers game at that point in time. I've been, again, off late, I've been lucky. I have had great teammates, great team members.
Yeah, I really think there should be 1-to-1 DS to PM or DA to PM. Like every PM, unless there's someone who's super data savvy, should have a dedicated data person that's going to learn their product area. Because like you guys have talked about so many different varieties of work throughout the life cycle, they need someone to do that. And it doesn't make sense to spread them thin. Anagh and I were on a team where we were 2-to-1 PM, 2 data scientists, 1 PM. And that was pretty awesome. We got shit done.
That's awesome.
We were the stakeholders.
The stakeholders.
So we are coming to the end, but before we end, Anagh, what is the tech stack that you worked with in your career as a data science product? What are the type of tools?
So I think the most common language or tools for data querying would be some flavor of SQL or Hive or Spark, right? It need not be like the exact one. I worked across different things. Obviously, at Amazon, we had AWS, so they had Redshift. At Twitter, we had Google Stack, so we had BigQuery. Next door, we have, I think, AWS on Databricks. So it's kind of some flavor of querying languages. So that's the querying part of it. For dashboarding, again, it really depends on the tech stack of the company. I worked with Looker, I worked with Data Studio, I worked with Tableau. The spirit of all the things are very similar. What really matters is what you make of it and what is the story that you're trying to tell for the product and your partners. With respect to the analysis, again, it's a very personal choice. I've been lucky to be in companies which allows a variety of languages, but my go-to has been R and Python. More of late, Python started out with R and then moved more and more gradually to Python because it's more open source. It's easy to get licenses. So that has been kind of my analysis tool set in general. Tidbit, one nugget of information is I still love Excel. So Excel is going to be your friend. You might not need all these fancy querying. You might just need a very simple Excel thing. So not ever shy away from that. Then there is a lot of experimentation tools. You might have in-house experimentation tools. You might have third-party vendors. Usually more mature companies have their own set of internal tools. Yeah, that's been my tech stack. Nothing too crazy. Hopefully things people have heard already.
Last question. What's the most underrated skill you think aspiring data scientists or current
That's a
data
great
scientists
question.
should invest in?
I have two answers. You need to be able to use Excel without touching your mouse. Folks who know.
Oh,
Okay,
folks
honestly, in consulting though, like when I was doing a lot of Excel, I was like, you had to do that to be fast enough.
Exactly.
You had to like
oh my God. That's
Control D,
amazing.
Control R, and all this stuff.
I will die.
Yes.
I'll die on that hill. I'm ready
Yeah.
to die on that hill. But
Mm.
jokes aside, I think the real answer is communication is a huge deal. To be honest, again, we are almost a bridge between all these different types of roles you talked about, right? Engineering, PM, designers. So you need to be good at communicating enough with all of those. You need to pick up like their jargon. Let's say you're talking to an MLE, you need to figure out, hey, what model characteristics do they care about? When you're talking about feature flagging with the engineer, you need to figure out, hey, okay, where exactly is the code getting evaluated? Why is there a sample rating mismatch or stuff like that? So I think we need to be savvy enough. We need not know the exact things for like what they are doing, but savvy enough to kind of be communicating across the board with all the types of people you work with. And I think that's a really underrated skill and it takes time to pick up. That is not something people teach you in grad school.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much, Anagh. It was so wonderful chatting with you. I think your experience in Twitter, Amazon, Nextdoor, where we all work together, I didn't feel like we actually spoke to a guest. It's like speaking to an old friend.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you so
thought-
much for
I thought it was a hangout. I did not know you were making a podcast. So good luck. Awesome. Thank you for having me.
To our listeners, enjoy this. Please keep following us, subscribe, give us a like, and if you have any follow-up questions for Anagh or other topics you want us to talk about, drop them in the comments.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.